With his health fading and time fast running out, the British Major General James Wolfe gambled everything on an audacious and highly risky plan, leading his 4,000-strong army across a notoriously treacherous river, followed by a steep 165-foot nighttime climb up the cliff on the other side, emerging on the plain above undetected to surprise and destroy his unsuspecting French enemies. The short but bloody 8-minute-long battle that followed, deciding the destiny of Canada. The 7 Years' War of 1756 to 1763 was a truly global war. Europe was bitterly divided as an alliance of France, Austria, Sweden, Saxony, Russia and Spain fought against Britain, Prussia, Portugal and Hanover on battlefields across Europe, India and North America. While France was busy in Europe fighting the fearsome Prussian armies of Frederick the Great, Britain seized the chance to weaken the French navy and expand her imperial borders in India and North America, attacking French colonies and merchant fleets as this European war spread to the far corners of the planet. In Canada, the early stages of the war were marked by a string of French victories. However, a newly elected British government in London committed to strengthening its position in North America, while the French were forced to focus more of their efforts in Europe. In the months that followed, several key French positions along the Canadian Atlantic coast were seized by the British, clearing a sea route to Quebec, the main French settlement in North America. If Quebec could be taken, the French could be permanently evicted from North America, leaving Britain as the uncontested master of the continent. Yet capturing the heavily fortified city of Quebec would be no simple feat. Protected by high walls and with its back to an almost impassable river overlooked by steep cliffs, any direct assault would likely be repulsed with heavy casualties. For any ordinary commander, the mission would have been viewed as a poisoned chalice, a doomed fool's errand that was sure to end or at least damage their career and reputation. However, for the infamously daring Major General James Wolfe, this mission impossible was just the opportunity he was looking for. Commissioned as an officer at just 14 years of age, Wolfe rapidly rose through the ranks, demonstrating incredible and often reckless bravery in conflicts all over the world, including the War of the Austrian Succession, the suppression of the Jacobite Rebellion, and now the 7 Years' War. Now just 32 years old, Wolfe was promoted to the rank of Major General and tasked by the Prime Minister himself to capture the French fortress capital of Quebec by any means necessary. With just 5,000 men under his command, he would have to somehow overcome the formidable French defences and natural terrain, and then defeat the 13,000-strong defence army garrisoned in the city. Yet for a man who openly wished to die a glorious death in battle, the looming siege of Quebec offered the potential fulfillment of his lifetime ambition. However, even the usually unbreakable Wolfe was almost beaten by the challenge he faced. Following his arrival in April 1759, several brave but foolhardy direct assaults against the city were repulsed with heavy casualties, and with winter looming on the horizon, sickness began to tear through his army, with Wolfe himself falling ill with dysentery. In an effort to lure the French army away from the safety of their defences and into open battle, Wolfe tried to provoke his enemy by burning French settlements along the St. Lawrence River. However, the French commander refused to be baited out of Quebec. With his army weakening by the day and his own health rapidly failing, Wolfe gambled everything on a nighttime amphibious attack that was incredibly dangerous, but unexpected enough that it just might work. Against the warnings of his most experienced officers, Wolfe intended to transport 4,000 men down the St. Lawrence River in the middle of the night, covertly land them at a small cove, climb a 165-foot cliff face, and then line up in battle formation on the plains above, right under the nose of the French. The plan was fraught with risk. If the British were detected on the river, their small rowing boats would be easy prey for French cannon, and if they were discovered while scaling the cliffs, the numerous French troops defending the heights above would turn the daring surprise attack into a turkey shoot, easily picking off the vulnerable men mid-climb. Yet the sheer audacity of the plan was also its greatest strength. The French commander Montcalm had left the riverside cliffs virtually undefended, believing them to be an impenetrable natural barrier that only a fool or madman would consider scaling. However, unfortunately for the defenders of Quebec, Wolfe was considered even by his own side to be both. With the light of the moon obscured by cloud, on the 12th of September 1759, Wolfe's 4,500 men nervously boarded 30 purpose-built landing craft, the boat's oars muffled, and each soldier under strict orders to remain completely silent. If the men were detected on the river, the attack would be over before it had even begun. Despite these careful measures, reports of boat sightings on the river still reached Montcalm. However, the French general is said to have dismissed them as merely routine supply vessels, still confident that nobody would be crazy enough to assault his well-defended position from the river. At 2 a.m, the British boats cautiously approached the designated landing zone, the specially designed flat bottoms allowing each vessel to land right on the shoreline, speeding up the deployment process as each boat unloaded the 50 soldiers on board in under 2 minutes. As the Redcoats deployed on the river shore, the British fleet carried out a diversionary attack to the east of the city to draw French attention and troops away from the landing zone. However, although the shore and cliffs were virtually undefended, a French picket nearly foiled the British plan. Spotting shadowy figures moving around the river shore, an alert French sentry demanded that the mysterious trespassers identify themselves. Believing that they had been discovered, the British soldiers prepared to open fire in response. However, disaster was averted thanks to the efforts of one of their French-speaking officers, who replied in perfect French that they were French Marines bringing routine supplies into Quebec. Satisfied by this response, the picket failed to raise the alarm, and with his guard now down, was swiftly and silently eliminated at the hands of a British bayonet. The Redcoats breathed a sigh of relief. The plan was still intact. By around 4 a.m, the well-disciplined British troops began to scale the steep cliffs in complete silence, even going as far as to remove their boots to minimize the noise as they scrambled up the crumbling cliff face, stealthily dispatching any unfortunate French pickets they encountered along the way. The 4,000 soldiers carried 2 cannons up the perilous 165-foot climb in near complete darkness, each man fully aware that just one vigilant French sentry could see them all plummet to a quick death. Barely holding on to the cliffside by the tips of their fingers, the exposed British troops would be unable to take cover or even draw their weapons should battle commence. This feeling of complete vulnerability sent a chill down the spine of men who usually at least had a fighting chance. Yet despite such perilous danger, the entire army successfully made the climb undetected, and as the sun rose on the morning of the 13th of September, the French commander Montcalm was shocked to see a 1-kilometer-long, 2-ranks-deep line of redcoats stretching across the Plains of Abraham behind Quebec, their bayonets glistening menacingly in the sunlight. The French had been taken by complete surprise. The sight of an entire army seemingly appearing out of thin air drove the usually cautious General Montcalm to abandon his defensive position and move out to meet the British in open battle. Exactly why he chose to attack so quickly is unknown. Perhaps he feared that if given more time, the British might strengthen their position with reinforcements and even haul up more cannons with which to destroy the city's walls. Or maybe the humiliated aristocrat simply saw a decisive attack against the enemy as the only way to restore his now tarnished reputation. Whatever his motivations, most historians agree that Montcalm acted with undue haste. With their backs to the cliff, the British had no possibility of retreat and no reinforcements were on the way. They also lacked the artillery necessary to destroy the French fortifications. The French could have just waited for their own reinforcements to arrive and attacked with a much larger force. With the French army comprised of large numbers of raw recruits and local militias who lacked the training and discipline required to perform large, cohesive battlefield maneuvers, Montcalm was advancing against a British force of experienced professional soldiers, highly disciplined men who had been well drilled on exactly what they needed to do to crush the approaching French. The few minutes of battle that followed would alter the destiny of the continent. As the French lines approached, Wolfe ordered his men to hold fire. His plan was to only unleash a volley at the last minute when the enemy were at an uncomfortably close range, thus maximizing the devastation and impact of the British musket fire. Conversely, the ill-disciplined French fired 2 disorganized volleys as soon as they reached the outer limit of their muskets' effective range, causing the majority of their shot to fall woefully short. With the French bearing down on them, the British continued to hold fire until the enemy line was just 130 feet away. Wolfe then calmly gave the command to open fire. The sound of thousands of lethally accurate British muskets firing at the same time shook the ground and filled the air with choking smoke as hundreds of French troops fell to the ground dead. The British lines then advanced a few paces and fired a second devastating volley that utterly shattered the remaining resolve of the French army, sending them fleeing in panic and terror. General Montcalm tried to rally his retreating troops, however he was quickly cut down by a British musket and would die from his wounds the following day. With the French lines dissolving in disarray, Wolfe sensed that victory was in his grasp and ordered a bayonet charge to finish off the enemy once and for all. Wolfe had already been shot in the wrist early on in the engagement, however as he advanced alongside his men for the final bayonet charge, he was hit 2 more times. First in the stomach, and then once again in the chest, the musket ball fatally piercing his lung. As he bled out on the ground, he held on to life just long enough to hear that the French were on the run, reportedly saying, "Now God be praised, I will die in peace." Wolfe issued his final orders, then turned onto his side and died. The general had fallen knowing that he had done his duty and achieved his lifetime ambition. His daring attack and victory had made him a national hero. After a short siege, the British finally captured Quebec on September the 18th. 640 French and 650 British were killed or wounded in the fighting, and both sides had lost their commander. However, despite the battle lasting just a few minutes, the fall of Quebec would have far-reaching consequences. The British victory was a turning point in the 7 Years' War. Just 3 years later, France would be forced to sign the Treaty of Paris, ceding most of her territory in North America to the British. The British Empire was now the dominant force in North America. However, by removing the French threat from the continent, Wolfe's victory at Quebec indirectly sowed the seeds of the American Revolution. No longer in need of protection against the French on their many frontiers, the American colonies resented paying taxes for the upkeep of military garrisons, which were now deemed to be not only unnecessary, but in place to keep them under British tyranny, a major factor in their rebellion against the British Crown just 6 years after General Wolfe and his adversary General Montcalm laid down their lives for control over Canada. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I hope to see you again soon.